Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So today, we're going to try to distill some wisdom from a conversation between Lex Fridman and Tim Urban.
Oh, yeah.
You know Tim Urban, right?
Of course. The wait, but why guy.
Yeah, exactly. The one with the stick figures, and he dives into these really complex topics.
It does.
But he makes them interesting.
Yeah, he's got a knack for making these sort of daunting topics approachable and fun.
Yeah. And this conversation is a good example of that. I mean, they cover so much ground.
Yeah.
Human history, technology, the future of society.
I mean, it's really quite a lot.
It is. And they jump right in with this analogy.
Okay.
Imagine human history as a 1,000-page book.
Okay. I'm picturing.
Each page is 250 years. So
That's a good way to think about it, yeah.
Urban points out that 975 pages of that book
Wow.
are prehistory.
That puts things into perspective.
Yeah, we're only on the last 25 pages.
Yeah, like we're just getting started.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that even figures like Buddha and Jesus, who seem so far removed from our time, we're actually just, well, as Urban puts it, dudes.
Just regular people.
Yeah, real people living their lives.
You're dealing with the everyday stuff.
Right. Dealing with problems, maybe even complaining about the weather.
Absolutely. We're all part of this, chain of humanity.
It's a long chain.
Yeah, it is. And it goes in some interesting directions.
It does. Like Urban brings up Genghis Khan.
Oh, yeah.
Who goes from, this poverty-stricken childhood catching rats.
Wow, what a story.
To conquering vast swaths of the world.
Yeah, you don't see that coming.
Talk about a plot twist.
It really highlights how chance and circumstance can just completely shape history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes you think about, small events or individuals that can have this ripple effect across generations.
For sure.
And speaking of perspective shifts, let's talk about the hedonic treadmill.
Okay.
Which is Urban's concept of, this constant striving for more.
Yeah.
Even when we achieve good fortune.
We adapt, right? And then we want the next thing.
Yeah. We adapt, and then we want the next thing.
And then the next thing, and the next thing, it never ends.
It's like we're running on a treadmill.
Exactly. Putting in all that effort, but not really getting anywhere.
Yeah. Lex Fridman actually shares a personal anecdote about this.
Oh, really?
He talks about moving to America and missing fresh bananas for a whole year.
Okay. That's relatable.
Right. I think we've all had those moments where we fixate on what we don't have.
Yeah, even when we're surrounded by abundance.
Even when we have so much. So Urban's point is, how do we cultivate gratitude in a world that's constantly tempting us?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's more.
Yeah. Are we wired to always chase that next hit of dopamine?
Is it a choice?
Yeah.
Like, can we actually choose gratitude?
Or are we just programmed to always want more?
It's a tough one. And it leads us to this other paradox that Urban presents.
Okay.
This idea that progress and dystopia can exist simultaneously.
At the same time.
Yeah, he argues that life today, with all of its advancements, would seem like utopia to people from the past.
I mean, think about it. Smartphones, the internet, modern medicine.
Right. Things that our ancestors couldn't even fathom.
It's incredible.
But then he cautions us.
Oh.
He reminds us that dystopias are not just fictional concepts.
Right, they can happen.
Yeah, things can change rapidly.
Like overnight.
What seems like paradise one day can turn to chaos the next.
He uses the fall of the Roman Empire as an example.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. A seemingly invincible civilization.
Right, and then boom.
It's a sobering thought, especially when we think about the pace of technological advancement today.
It is a little scary.
We have virtual reality, artificial intelligence, space exploration.
It's all happening so fast.
All these amazing possibilities, but also potential pitfalls.
So how do we balance that excitement about progress with the awareness of the dangers?
It keeps me up at night, to be honest.
Me too.
But Urban offers a framework for understanding these challenges that we face, both individually and as a society.
Okay, I like frameworks. Tell me more.
He calls it the ladder of thinking.
The ladder of thinking.
Yeah, and it contrasts the primitive mind, which is driven by instinct and emotion.
Okay, so that's like our gut reactions and stuff.
Exactly. With the higher mind.
Okay.
That strives for reason and truth-seeking.
So it's like our more rational selves.
Yes. And he uses this really relatable example to illustrate it.
I'm listening.
Why do we eat Skittles, even though we know they're not good for us?
Good question. Why do we do that?
Primitive mind
craves
that instant gratification, that sugar rush.
It overrides the higher mind.
It does. It overrides that part of us that knows about nutrition and long-term health.
It's like we're constantly battling our inner caveman.
Right. But the key takeaway here is recognizing where we are on the ladder of thinking.
So are we reacting from a place of fear, anger, instant gratification?
Exactly. Or are we engaging with issues in a more thoughtful, reasoned way?
It's about being self-aware.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
How do we encourage ourselves and each other to move up that ladder?
To that higher level of thinking.
Especially in a world that often feels designed to trigger our primitive minds.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we should pause here.
Okay.
And pick up the rest of this conversation in part 2.
Sounds good. I think people are going to want to hear more about this.
I think so too. So we were talking about that ladder of thinking.
Yeah. How do we actually encourage ourselves to move towards that, more rational, truth-seeking thought process?
It's a good question. And Urban argues that one of the key factors is the environment that we create for discussions and debate.
Okay, interesting.
He contrasts echo chambers, where people just reinforce their existing beliefs, with idea labs, where diverse perspectives are welcomed, and the goal is truth-seeking.
I like that idea, labs.
It's a good way to think about it.
So it's about being intentional about the spaces we inhabit.
Exactly.
Both online and offline. Are we surrounding ourselves with people who challenge our thinking?
Right. Are they echoing our biases, or are they actually pushing us
to
think differently?
And Urban tells this funny story about his college friends.
Oh, yeah.
Who loved to argue with each other.
Okay.
And his new boyfriend at the time thought they were having this serious fight.
Oh, no.
But for them, it was just...
Oh, so it's just friendly...
Their way of, engaging in,
intellectual sparring?
Yeah, like friendly intellectual sparring.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a good reminder that not all disagreement is hostile or unproductive.
No, not at all.
In fact, it can be.
It can be stimulating.
Yeah, and lead to new insights.
Absolutely. But, as Urban points out, social media often devolves into these echo chambers where nuanced conversations are drowned out by outrage and tribalism.
It's true.
It's a breeding ground for that low-rung thinking.
And it has real-world consequences.
Yeah. I mean, if we're constantly reinforcing our own biases, we become less able to see other perspectives.
Less empathetic.
Less willing to compromise.
Yeah. And this is where Urban's distinction between liberal social justice and social justice fundamentalism becomes really relevant.
This is where it gets a little tricky.
This part was tricky for me. Can you break it down a little further?
Sure. So both movements claim to be pursuing social justice.
Okay.
But their approaches differ significantly.
Got it.
Liberal social justice aims to create a more just and equitable society by working within existing systems and institutions.
So things like legal reforms, policy changes, advocacy groups.
Exactly. Using the tools of democracy to address issues of discrimination and inequality.
Makes sense.
Social justice fundamentalism, on the other hand, takes a more radical approach.
Okay.
Urban argues that it often views liberalism itself as part of the problem and seeks to dismantle existing power structures.
So through more confrontational tactics?
Sometimes, yeah. He uses the term soft cudgel to describe these tactics, which aim to silence opposing viewpoints.
Through social pressure shaming.
Yeah, even threats to one's reputation or livelihood.
So it's like cancel culture and call-out campaigns.
That's one example.
So while both movements might share the same goal of a more just society, their methods can be vastly different.
Sometimes even at odds with each other.
Yeah. And Urban expresses concern that these soft cudgel tactics can erode trust in institutions and make it harder to have those nuanced conversations.
Yeah, those difficult conversations about complex social issues.
He worries that this kind of ideological purity testing can actually hinder progress.
And that's a good point.
It's like that saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good.
I like that.
Sometimes in our pursuit of absolute ideological purity, we undermine our ability to achieve meaningful change.
And this ties directly into Urban's analogy of the electric fence.
Ah, yes. The thought pile and the speech curve.
Right. You remember that one?
This one really stuck with me. Can you remind our listeners what that's all about?
So imagine the thought pile, which represents the full spectrum of opinions on any given topic.
Okay.
Then there's the speech curve, which represents the range of opinions that people actually feel safe expressing publicly.
Got it. So what determines the shape of that speech curve?
Well, In a truly free society,
Yeah.
the speech curve would ideally mirror the thought pile.
So people would feel comfortable expressing a wide range of views.
Exactly, without fear of reprisal.
But then Urban introduces this character,
Okay.
King Mustache,
King Mustache.
a fictional tyrant who uses fear and force
Okay.
to control what people are allowed to say.
So he's like the embodiment of censorship.
Exactly. And King Mustache creates a censorship gap.
A censorship gap.
Yeah, a zone of ideas that people are too afraid to express.
Because of the potential consequences.
Right. It's a chilling image, and it feels increasingly relevant today.
Yeah, it does.
Because even in societies that supposedly value free speech,
Yeah.
we see these soft cudgel tactics
Right.
creating a similar chilling effect.
People self-censor.
Yeah, for fear of being ostracized, shamed, or canceled.
And Urban argues that this self-censorship can be just as damaging as government-imposed censorship.
Right, because it stifles.
It stifles creativity, innovation, the free exchange of ideas.
Which are essential for a healthy society.
Exactly. It's like an invisible electric fence has been erected around certain topics.
And anyone who dares to cross that boundary risks getting zapped.
That's a great way to put it.
So Urban's point is, how do we dismantle these electric fences?
Right. Both the real and the metaphorical ones.
How do we create a culture
where
people feel safe to express themselves?
Even if their views are unpopular or controversial.
It's a big question, and I think it's one that we'll continue to grapple with.
I think so too.
As a society.
Yeah.
But Urban offers a starting point. Courage. He believes that courage is the antidote
to this kind of harmful groupthink.
He uses the example of Toby Lucha,
the
CEO of Shopify, who publicly rejected pressure to make his company overly political.
Oh, wow.
He stated that Shopify's goal is to make commerce better for everyone, not to solve every societal problem.
And you know what? Shopify is thriving.
Yeah. It shows that standing up for your principles can actually be good for business.
What's crucial here is Urban's point that courage is contagious.
Oh, that's interesting.
When one person speaks up, it empowers others to do the same.
It breaks down that fear barrier.
It's like a ripple effect.
One act of courage can inspire a whole wave of truth-telling.
And independent thinking.
Exactly. Urban even encourages us to start small.
Okay, how?
Maybe it's just disagreeing with a friend in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Or sharing an unpopular opinion within your own circle.
It's about building those courage muscles gradually.
Yeah, so we can eventually challenge those bigger societal electric fences.
I like that, but I think we should take a breather here and come back for the final part of our exploration.
Sounds good.
Into this fascinating conversation. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our look into this conversation.
You know, one thing that really struck me was this idea of intellectual humility.
Yeah, that's a big one for Urban. This idea that, true knowledge begins with acknowledging how much we don't know.
It's humbling, isn't it?
It is. And he even uses this image of the Valley of Insecurity to describe that moment when we realize the vastness of our own ignorance.
It's like we're standing on this child's hill of naive confidence.
And then we tumble down into this valley of self-doubt.
It could be pretty disorienting.
Oh, yeah. It can be a real shock to the system.
But, as Urban explains, it's actually a necessary step.
On the path to becoming a more mature and nuanced thinker.
It's about letting go of the need to have all the answers.
Yeah, and embracing the uncertainty of the unknown.
So it's about moving from that child's hill to what he calls the grown-up mountain.
I like that grown-up mountain.
Where we accept that learning is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And that there's always more to discover.
It's a process.
It is. And this is where Urban gets really critical of modern universities.
Oh, really? Why?
He argues that instead of pushing students off that child's hill and into the valley of insecurity, they're often reinforcing a very narrow set of beliefs.
So they're kind of like handing students a pre-packaged worldview.
Yeah, and saying, here, this is the truth. Don't question it.
Which is kind of ironic, isn't it?
It is. Because the whole point of education should be to teach people how to think for themselves.
Exactly. Urban believes that true education should expose students to diverse perspectives, challenge their preconceived notions.
Encourage them to become lifelong learners.
Yeah, not just memorizers of approved information.
It goes back to that ladder of thinking, right?
Absolutely. The primitive mind avoids disagreement.
Yeah.
While the higher mind embraces it as an opportunity for growth.
And Urban argues that respectful disagreement is one of the hallmarks of a healthy society.
It's how we challenge bad ideas, refine good ones, and ultimately
move closer to truth.
It's about recognizing that even those we disagree with might have something valuable to teach us.
Yeah, but it feels like we've lost the ability to disagree constructively.
What do you mean? So Urban makes a distinction between criticism culture and cancel culture.
Okay, I'm listening.
Criticism culture focuses on engaging with ideas.
Okay.
Even if they're challenging or unpopular.
So it's about presenting evidence, making reasoned arguments.
Yeah, having robust debates.
Attacking the ideas, not the person.
Cancel culture, on the other hand, seeks to silence opposing voices.
Through tactics like
public shaming, ostracizing, trying to ruin someone's career.
It's about shutting down conversations.
Yeah, rather than engaging with them.
And that creates this climate of fear.
Where people are afraid to speak their minds.
Or express dissenting viewpoints.
It's that electric fence all over again.
So where do we go from here?
Well, as we've learned from Tim Urban,
it
starts with courage. The courage to acknowledge what we don't know. The courage to engage with those who hold different views. And the courage to speak our truth even when it's unpopular.
It's about pushing back against those echo chambers.
Right.
And cultivating those idea labs.
Yes, where diverse perspectives can flourish.
And recognizing that disagreement doesn't have to be destructive.
No, it can be the catalyst for growth innovation.
A deeper understanding of ourselves.
And the world around us.
Such a powerful message.
It really is.
And it feels more relevant than ever.
I think so too.
A huge thank you to Lex Fridman and Tim Urban.
Yes.
For this incredibly stimulating conversation.
And to you, dear listener, for joining us.
Yeah, we hope you've gained some valuable insights.
And are feeling inspired to think deeply.
And engage thoughtfully with the world.
If you enjoyed this episode,
don't forget to subscribe.
To avoid missing out on future conversations.
We'll see you next time.